Have you ever noticed how a sense of fairness seems just to be inherent to us as we go through our lives? Even children in the playground, they have a strong sense of what is right and what is fair and what is just. Charlie and Billy were playing in the playground one day, and some little girl walked past them, and if they had been 15, it would have probably gone differently, but they were 5. So Charlie picks up a stick, and after she's walked past, he whacks her on the head. Well, by the time she turns around, Charlie has gotten rid of the stick. And of course, he immediately points to Billy and said, "He did it." Well, you know what happens? The teacher comes around and she goes, what's going on here? And the girl is crying, and Charlie is pointing at Billy. Now Billy is in trouble. And you know exactly what Billy says. "It's not fair." Now, when I was that age, the punishment for such an act would have involved a switch. But in today's kinder, more gentler day, probably a timeout. He would have had to have been punished nonetheless for acting this way, even though he had done nothing. It's unfair. But the teacher, out of her sense of justice, knows that this act must be punished. Even if Billy is able to point the finger back at Charlie and says, "No, he's really the one who did it," what's the teacher going to do? Punish them both, right? Because justice must be done. The Roman government had a very high sense of justice, and they would mete out punishment very quickly and very liberally. And the worst form of punishment they had was the crucifixion, where they would take someone and hang them on a cross until they died. Here in Jesus' case, mostly because of the abuse that he had taken prior to his crucifixion, Jesus survived on the cross only for 3 hours. In many cases, people would last on crosses for days. If they were fortunate enough to have family members there to stand guard over them, to keep them company, but also to try to keep the birds of prey and the rats from coming and pecking at them, nibbling away at them while they were on the cross. And the Romans used to mock and to laugh at those who were crucified. In fact, there's an interesting place in the scriptures where Jesus says, "If I am lifted up, I will draw all men unto me." But that phrase, "lifted up," was actually one that the Romans used to use to tease people, to tease rebels. "Oh, you think you want to be in charge? You think you're strong and mighty? We'll lift you up. We'll make you higher than everyone else." Speaking of a crucifixion. And they would always make the crucifixion as gruesome and as dehumanizing as possible, stripping them naked. Here in this story, they gamble for his clothing. The one who was being crucified would be standing there and always be in a public place by a roadway so that people can walk by. And we see this in the crucifixion story as people walk by and say, "He saved others. Can he save himself? Let him call." He said he was the Son of God. Let God come and save him. Let Elijah come and save him. They would mock him, dehumanize him. It was their sense of justice. Someone asked me just recently, or said to me actually, "When I get to heaven, I got a few things I want to ask God. Why does he allow so much pain, so much suffering, so much injustice in the world?" I said, "Well, that's a good question to ask God, but I know the answer, and it's a pretty simple one. The only way to end injustice in the world is to kill everybody. But God came up with a different plan. He came and he died in our place. That's hard for us to wrap our heads around. He came and he died in our place. That reading from Isaiah actually is the clearest description of what the cross means. He bore our sickness. He took our grief. He took our sorrows. He took our guilt and hung it upon a cross so that we could be free. Too many times in life, we want to take back our grief, take back our sorrow, take back our guilt. But Jesus died in our place. It was the only act of justice that wouldn't kill us all, that God came in our place. The young boys on the playground, they know what justice is, and they know that it's not fair. This life is not fair. C.S. Lewis, in one of his writings, there are two characters, and one of them asks, "Isn't God fair?" And the other said, "No. Just think of what he would do to us if he were fair." So justice is satisfied when God himself takes our punishment, takes our grief, takes our sorrow, takes our sin, and we are set free.